And this is a trader that at the beginning of his career started as a runner. He was able to move from 5 lots to 300 to 800 contracts in the space of 18 months. Phenomenal growth, multiple 7-figure trading account after struggling financially, then was able to accelerate his performance and all of a sudden had more money than God.
For a 25-year-old.
For a 25-year-old. Relative to any of his friends, what he could do, where he could go, how he could spend his money, and all the underpinnings where he started developing this type of performance slowly starts crumbling.
Deep down, he knew he was caught. The market always comes back. He was caught with his pants down. Within a week, he was down $500,000, a quarter of his trading account at the time. He then drew down the rest of his account.
To resurrect from a cataclysmic fall is much more challenging mentally than actually starting your trading career.
Alex, today we're talking about chapter 11. So we're changing tracks somewhat, but chapter 11 is all about the hero from the book Traders of Our Time, Navigating the Market's Impossible Landscape, which I'm sure viewers by now will know is coming out on March 27, 2025. And let's start off on something very interesting with the hero. That is an extract from the way his story begins. The way his cycle of growth, destruction, and resurrection, as one can infer by his nickname, his alias, shall we say, the hero. Because the hero is a very human story and, shall I say, a reflection of the human experience. So let me read you this extract. And we're now quoting the hero himself. I didn't. I was screaming. I was just screaming. Someone must have thought I was dying in my room. I was in tears, our trader said. That was the most frightening moment in my life. And I had many before that. During that space of the crude oil white box, that volatility trading hold, my entire world was flipped upside down. In this space, that successful, confident, fast-growing trader was reduced to nothing. My entire self-image was crushed. It was crumpled in front of me, dragged through the dirt. Everything changed. I had nothing to lean on. I was so scared. I was crippled, finished. That is the hero.
It's just a great way to kickstart, to feel these moments in time where everything all of a sudden seems like it's crashing down. We can no longer see the woods from the trees. Coming out on the other side, everything seems insurmountable. And this is a trader that at the beginning of his career started as a runner in his teens. His late teens, started as a runner, was offered opportunities at good universities in the UK, I think in the English literature department, stayed for a short period of time and then decided to leave and pursue his career in trading as a young teenager. And this is a trader that had maturity beyond his years. He has a presence at the desk of extreme focus. And this is a trader who took some period of time, over 24 to 36 months to find his groove as an edge. He was younger when he started. And then all of a sudden took a couple of years to just trade around 3 contracts. And then the asymmetrical P&L, where the skill and the P&L started converging, where he was able to move from 5 lots to 300 to 800 contracts in the space of 18 months. Phenomenal growth, multiple 7-figure trading account, arrived at that destination through the collective wisdom, learning ecosystem, a theme that runs thick in the entire book, of him learning from the people around him, from his the engineer, which was a catalyst. But this is a trader on the brink of the previous firm, was a grad when the previous firm stopped. I think he was just approximately going live. Then his opportunity to go live disappeared. But I remember approaching him on the floor, and I approached him. I said, I might be doing and starting a new firm. And if you want to join, I'd love you to join, because I could see he was one of the grads on the floor that would shut out any lad behavior, banter, as they call it in England, conversations outside of markets, and was just religious in his focus. And his story is, like many of the chapters in this book, is a supreme story of slow growth and then accelerated growth, and then the Eiffel Tower effect of reverse on the other side, complete destruction, P&L, namely because the very elements or the very components that got him there, he started sacrificing. And those components of routine, rituals, with a so-called obsessive personality, all of a sudden disappeared. And he was receiving positive P&L feedback loops. So give us your take of him, as well as who would want to read this chapter.
Well, welcome to chapter 11, everyone. Alex, he is, I think we said before, what makes you in trading is also what breaks you very often, or can get you in the end. You know, if you're made in a crisis when things are flying around and there's volatility, that is the very thing to undo you, and you'll experience a lot of your own personal career volatility crisis, personal crisis. And everything that Alex just mentioned happened to our trader before the age or at the age of 25.
An entire lifetime of the human experience crushed, contained in this limited timeline.
Yes. And as I said many times, all of these traders feel like they just walked out of a novel, but this trader more so. He is, again, racked with contradictions and interesting, athletic, but also supremely nerdy and into his literature and contradictions, both of how he sees himself in the world, the way he perhaps meshes contradictions in trading as well, and can sort of slap things together and make it work. And that's part of his genius, contradictions in how, he can swing in P&L and so many things. But the thing that impressed me the most is first his age. And that's why I was, when I came onto the floor myself. Yes, his intense maturity and focus in both presence at a desk, the maturity at which he presented himself at a desk, focus into the point where that focus can then make him to learn and also break him, which happened. He said he has a very obsessive personality. There is a quote where you prompted him, Alex, in his chapter where you asked him, do you have an obsession with pain? And he said, no, I have an obsession with everything. And that is then, the market always turns strengths into weaknesses. That is what led this paragon of routine, reflection, debriefing, journaling, all the things, we talked about with the student, for example, was slowly eroded, and no one knew apart from him, because then he found new obsessions outside of the trading floor, new at the time, started partying in secret, double midnight life. And then he turned into a trader who would walk in late on an ECB day, I believe, or just walk in late in market volatility, do no prep, nothing, lift the high in the Bund, 800 lots, bank on that.
Make $250,000.
Yes, and as you said, that is probably his peak bulletproof mode, where you can walk in, do no wrong. You get speaking about feedback loops, all the worst feedback loops, which I'm sure will be familiar to some people listening right now, not just in trading, but in many domains. And the structure and the fissures turn to what seem small injuries, become huge fissures, and all before you know it, everything crumbles and you're left with absolutely nothing. Because the lag effect, and this is what you talk about very often, Alex, it comes up in the Heroes chapter. The lag effect, you get underpaid for so long while you're overworking your skills and your focus and your routine and this monastic life devotion that trading requires in the early years. And then all of a sudden you get massively overpaid, and you can still get overpaid for a long time while removing that structure, removing your process and debriefing and just pure work. And that gives you a very bad confirmation of that you can keep doing this. You think, oh, I don't need to do this anymore. I don't need these people anymore. I don't need this floor anymore. I don't need anything anymore. Look at me. I've just bought the high in the Bund and I just banked.
And you describing there the so-called unsustainable behaviors. If you're enjoying this discussion about the hero, one of the traders in Traders of Our Time, and you want to go deeper, head over to tradersofourtime.com to sign up and get chapter 1 for free. You'll stay in the loop with exclusive content, insights, and updates, and you'll be among the first to read the book when it launches on March 27, 2025. The engineer is a master of understanding the unsustainable behaviors because they could be so covered by the wrong confirmations of P&L, or the so-called P&L biases on both ways. If I were to spread that story just a little bit wider, here's a trader who then, after struggling financially, then was able to accelerate his performance and all of a sudden had more money than God.
For a 25-year-old.
Relative to any of his friends, what he could do where he could go, how he could spend his money. So that monk type life, as you described, all of a sudden transforms itself, almost a shape shifting from monk to I've got all this money, I can enjoy the fruits of my labor, and all the underpinnings that got him to where he started developing this type of performance slowly starts crumbling, as you described. And that is one of the most unbelievable consistent patterns I see on a trading floor, is the traders who've been working incredibly hard, who eventually are able to take a draw from their trading account, who then can go on a holiday, maybe a couple more holidays. They've had a tough week. They've got more money in the bank. They don't have to face friction as much. They can just take it easy. And all of that effort and process they had cultivated slowly starts disappearing, sometimes quickly. Effectively, your process just slips through quicksand. And that's why I see majority of traders who make it don't make it. Mm-hmm. Where they get to that point that they can draw, they can make money. And the traders who are able to somehow maintain friction, maintain, a rather disciplined lifestyle, where they're just accumulating money on their trading account, building personal wealth on their bank account, but not really spending it, not really realizing those fruits, at least not at a large rate, somehow, such as the warrior, such as the engineer, are able to consistently perform because they don't realize that type of lifestyle potential, and therefore they create this need to perform. Mm-hmm. And so this, I find it the most fascinating study and analysis. But what made the hero also so special the beginning of his career was his ability to start moving quickly and aggressively, conviction and size, trust, back himself. And if you were to explore the nature of backing yourself, with the hero, to move from 3 to 800 contracts, where you cannot be moving in size, that common theme of the traders are able to scale up that asymmetrical process. What makes a hero special in this regard?
In a way, Alex, it's very interesting you mentioned this now. I think that probably reveals a rock previously unturned for myself of why I respect, and especially I've always respected him. And the reason why is that he had this confidence, which you rarely see in junior traders, backed by tangible things. And you can see it. You can see it in all domains, but especially backed by someone who's both confident and has reason to do it. And he said himself, for whatever reason, although we can get an inkling as to why, he never had the hesitation to just keep putting on size on the things that make sense. We're talking about profile trades here.
Yes. We're talking about many profile. This is a technical trader making six-figure trades on technical setups in the market profile.
Yes. And just his ability to reach laterally and think and go on a road that is so untrodden from the beginning, not even on a specific trade, Alex, but also from a career direction, and develop uniquely and to be able to do that is just so impressive, because there's so many other profiles of people, personalities that are just not that. And then, the way he synthesized that, and then how he reaches like crisis in his career. And that is all of this, perhaps a very long answer to your question of who should read his chapter. Again, everything we talked about so far in the video, and we suggest in the book that you can give each chapter to someone, you diagnose them of X, Y, and Z, and you can say, hey, read this chapter. See what resonates with you. This chapter, I think, is both a warning sign you can plant into the ground, therefore required reading, more so than already is required reading for the whole thing. And also for people who have truly experienced what I will posit now, Alex, so he took a huge, gigantic salvo to his P&L account from a size perspective. But for someone who really reached the point of complete identity obliteration, for someone who truly reached a low in many, many ways, and the chapter explains everything in detail, but who truly reached this point where, as we said with the razor, like you now have two options. You can keep going and you can stop right now. And it's when, if you're at that moment, you got to read this chapter. Let's explore it.
Yeah, and just back to your point of who this chapter is for For me, as a performance coach for various levels of traders, this is a chapter I'd give every single trader who's just started making it. That point where all of a sudden you've made it, all the adrenaline that supported you to make it starts subsiding, you can relax. This is a chapter for that, because I've seen it over and over again. So it's for every trader who for the first time feels that he can start drawing money, can start, just having more money in the bank account, has a trading account, and not forgetting where he came from. This is that chapter, because to resurrect from a cataclysmic fall is much more challenging mentally, psychologically, than actually starting your trading career. It draws significant more reserves because you felt it, what it was like being at the so-called top. Mm-hmm. You felt it was like the tangibility of P&L. And when that so-called feels robbed and you emotionally charge it, especially with the ego and that aspect of identity obliteration, this is the part where most traders struggle, because we link, like in any profession, if we're not doing well in a profession, it's us. And this is where the engineer is quite wonderful, in that he can take every learning and lesson as part of this wonderful, beautiful art and process and craft of speculation. There's no identity link. So his emotional, energetic pull is less. His time's being spent in those emotional vortexes or those emotional, cesspools where you're just wallowing in yourself and your ego is destroying you. He spends less time in that, and therefore you can focus on the art. Mm. Whereas a trader who has linked significant amounts of his identity to performance, significant amounts of his identity to his performance, is a trader that when he reaches a difficult period, finds it very difficult to escape out of that emotional prison.
Yes, and therefore the hero is then understanding how he got to where he was. This is the warning sign. And should you find yourself through those reasons or other reasons, how the warrior himself got out of it, how he recovered. I remember very distinctly, it truly felt like he was a different person when I met him on the trading floor 2019, leading up to 2020. The incident in which I quoted everyone happened in March 2020, this calamitous day that is discussed in the book. And we interviewed and spoke to him in September, October 21. So it was fresh enough where he will be, again, something I respect him massively for. He is very open and frank. Even with the book here, he was, next level open about all his mistakes and all the things. For someone who's achieved so much and done so much and is such a model in so many ways, he really wanted to focus on all his mistakes and all his bad side. He wasn't interested in talking about the upside good stuff, which everyone wants to hear. So he... it felt like a man who just recovered from wounds. Like the wound has just closed up, but it's still fresh enough to be on top of mind. But just, we didn't cover it gave him enough perspective on the whole situation. And after all of this, after this story of complete identity obliteration, where he said, he felt like he was finished, crippled, that happened in a week in March 2020, where within a week he was down $500,000, a quarter of his trading account at the time. The P&L loss notwithstanding, he then drew down the rest of his account to very little and then built it back up. But the P&L kind of doesn't matter, because it is a situation on the second part of that week. He was caught in a crude oil white box. And in that moment, he was offside on a white box where he was going offside 700 ticks. If people know...
Multiple six figures.
Yeah. And as people know, who have seen white boxes or perhaps been caught in one, that is when the exchange shuts the market for trading because of a lack of illiquidity and too high volatility. How it is judged by the exchange is different, but it often comes out of nowhere. And the volatility, the white box lets you out when it judges that it's over. The white box can be at 5 seconds. It can be much longer than that. And the market can move anywhere it wants to. And you can't exit your position.
Purely out of your control.
Out of your control. And that cosmic indifference is terrifying. And that is what cracked him. It wasn't the P&L loss the previous week where he was down 250K, and then the P&L loss on his white box to 250K. He can swing, he can handle it. Proportionally to his account, he's handled much bigger swings. He always saw that as a point of growth.
So this was now the fragility moment.
This is the fragility moment, because deep down, he knew he was caught. The market always comes back, and it will come back, and it got him, and he knew he was caught. And in that moment, that event horizon, he was caught with his pants down, and everything he knew he was getting away with, he finally had to recognize within that space of time. And yeah, that's how he begins his chapter. And again, how do you recover from that? How do you think about it? And Alex, just to talk about this veiled fragility, we mentioned it before. In Hemingway, The Sun Also Rises, there was these two characters talking about how one of them went bankrupt. And famously, which has often been used in our financial domain, the guy answered gradually, then suddenly. And that sudden moment was that crude oil white box. But of course, that didn't happen out the blue. It was a gradual process of deterioration and decay.
That trade was a function and happened because of the trade that he would come in later in the afternoon, trade an ECB comment, make $250,000. So that positive P&L reinforcement built on an unsustainable practice eventually hunted him down to that moment when in the space of a week, he lost over $500,000, depleting his account, and the account just started going more and more south. Mm-hmm. And during this entire period, as the account is dropping, is all this consistent denial, potentially, what is happening here, the confidence that's been shattered, the belief in oneself, the obliteration of identity, and all of these emotional elements swirling into one powerful force: fear, greed, shame, all of the identity obliteration. And you get caught in the market. The market, when you're in that space, is highly more susceptible. The uncertainty rises, and it just happens all of a sudden, as you mentioned in that quote, you slowly go bankrupt and then you bankrupt. Mm-hmm. And so this is a trader that up until that moment, months prior to that, was that model so-called financial speculator, starting his career purely on the price ladder on the DOM, learning mindset, strong observer of the patterns of the DOM and the price ladder. And for him to move to the next level was his relationship and connection with the engineer. Mm-hmm. The engineer then took him under his wings. We have the engineer in the chapter, one of our 8-figure traders, and took him under his wings and leveraged the profile and training him in the profile to unlock his order flow skills. How one tool, if you layer it correctly, can actually amplify greater sum than the parts. Mm-hmm. And so that DOM overlaid with the profile gave him a more contextual understanding, and it was an electric performance shock into his system where he could start performing. That's where the size started accumulating. But what also happens is there was, during those moments in that relationship, of a complete, respect for, in this instance, the engineer. But once a young student starts becoming a very successful trader, all of a sudden, it's not the disrespect, but all of a sudden, I know. I know, I have answer. I'm receiving these positive P&L performances. All of a sudden, the blinds start coming in. The shutters of this overconfidence, and Daniel Kahneman speaks about it in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, is when you're overconfident, the ability to audit your decision-making becomes significantly less. Mm-hmm. And so your self becomes this volcano that's erupted with all this froth of how amazing I am. And your blinkers on both the auditory and the visual side just aren't as amplified. And whilst your lifestyle is changing. And so there was a period of time of disconnection from, his relationships that he built, and all unconsciously. It just all happens unconsciously. But if we were, as a young junior trader, mapping consistently how we're learning, if you can map as a junior trader along your entire path of how you are learning, and you draw a visual map, you'll start understanding later on, if this is what got me here, I'm going to make sure that this visual map is always growing on why I'm learning. Instead of, if you start obliterating or almost decapitating those limbs or that ecosystem of learning, then you can actually see why you can be falling off.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Alex, I just want to stay on the market profile just a bit longer. You see, here's a great example of the hero, which is very reflective of the book itself. It is full of these kind of stories and understanding how they navigated these parts of their lives, these traders. But it's also laden with a lot of, understanding what the profile is, discussing with the hero the market profile, how he leverages it, how he sees it. We have a whole interview section just on the profile. So it's a broad spectrum between story and navigation and these kind of career critical moments. And it's very much how does, the nuts and bolts of how he uses profile. And that's another answer to your question of who should read this chapter, is to both people who are willing to embark to use the profile, but more at the meta level, to enhance their trading by understanding that if we abstract profile and the dreaded word I hate, technical trading, into having an explicit framework for navigating markets, because that's what both the engineer and the hero say. It is a language and framework they use to understand markets through. That just happens to be market profile. Then that chapter is for them. Like, I truly, truly would have loved to have read and encountered this, especially my pre-Axia days of using a profile in this highly applied way. So that's one. And two, for people who can't really visualize or understand how this edge can be utilized, or perhaps not in an edge in a reductive way, but just how one's skills can be layered up and enhanced. Again, to those who don't believe news trading is possible, or that there's no edge in it, or that there's not possible or too dangerous, there's plenty of chapters to read in Traders of Our Time. These chapters, the hero and the engineer, for example, are pure framework, puzzle piece, profile using operators who are on the other side of the spectrum, if you want to draw one.
It's fascinating that prop traders, former professional prop traders, don't really believe their scalability in technical trading.
Yes.
And retail traders don't believe their scalability in news trading.
Yes.
So it's almost, you get these, whereas retail traders believe their scalability in technical trading.
Yes.
And, the professional traders believe there's only scalability in news trading. Mm-hmm. But what was this magic when we speak about in chapter 1 is this Northern European and the Mediterraneans, and this joining of this organism, this hybrid organism of news traders in the prop space. It's just known for trading news, and the technical traders, the profile. And that's what's so special about this chapter, as well as the engineer. The engineer's chapter and the hero's chapter, you're speaking about two practitioners of the profile and DOM. They're potentially the best on planet Earth in the futures market. Mm-hmm. Of taking contract size of in excess of 1,000 contracts, up to 2,000 and more, in pure profile technical DOM trades. And so those chapters both have the interviews with these two traders, where you enter the mind of what it means and how you go about assimilating or assembling the component parts of profile and DOM, layering those two edges, and how you exploit that, but with the other spare parts of leveraging on the back of news. And it just becomes this most unbelievable, wicked confluence of a holistic modern day trader, along with their journaling tactics. These are the hero, unbelievable journaler. We discussed it in the student, but his journaling of breaking down his psychology on the weekends was one of his biggest reflection edges. Now, how we organize that, but I find that tremendously almost insightful about the news and the technical traders, depending from what ecosystem you're born into.
And guess what? The trader of the future sees no distinction. Take, for example, the growth of the student, who at one point was on the known fringes, wanting to be a hybrid between both. Can he do it? Can he not do it? Can he bank his career on it? And now he has grown immensely.
He had another $250,000+ night last night.
And may he continue to do so, because he put in the work and in the cycles that came before to now leverage to become, as you said, an all seasons trader. And, we can talk a lot about, the metagame, understanding the game behind the game, understanding how to approach the game, and understanding that all this carryover baggage created in a prop space that you can't trade on again, I'll use this word, technical, with size, or in the retail world, where it's just full of echo chambers, each person telling each other that there's no such thing as like news trading or whatever. And, so much confirmation bias happening. And in the end, lo and behold, you can use every tool to your advantage and just become a unique trader.
The actual infrastructure that supports the so-called global, for want of a better word, these pseudo virtual prop firms who have created a belief, this visceral belief where they believe it, don't trade news because there's no edge. Meanwhile, if you really reverse engineer the reason for that is because they don't want to take on risk. And because they don't want to take on the risk, because their business model is run on something other than actually the traders potentially performing. I'm not here to, cast any, true understanding of their business model. If an infrastructure is put in place within an industry environment of you don't trade news for this reason, and we don't really tackle that. And that's what the traders all the time. It opens you up to the whole wealth and world of what's possible.
Yes.
And not having dogma.
Yes. And that's why we really wanted a broad spectrum of the way people trade.
Why we have 10 traders in this
who are
book.
Wildly different. And we're about to discuss another one as well who is very wildly different than everyone else, the adventurer.
The adventurer, we'll speak about that in a moment, but he is your retail pinup boy.
Yes, he is. Yeah, for sure. We'll discuss in a second. So he, wide range of experiences, both up and down. Like, with a hero, I mean, we could have easily shown like all the great stuff and put our hero on his own triumph and be like, oh, look at, Well,
we have many YouTube videos on him actually trading.
Yes, and we do.
And mapping his journey because he would record his trading.
And guess what? It all comes back to this, and it's what he said. It all matters, but when it comes down to it, the most important stuff I can tell you right now is exactly what happened to him. That is because all of this is important in the moment, strategy, figuring out, learning. But it all comes down to these critical moments in your career. We spoke about it with the Razor. It's literally something that is obvious and implicit or explicit in every chapter, and it is very much with the hero again. And there's so much to talk about with him, Alex, again, all the positive stuff, all the way he sees markets, the interesting thing, but we just chose to focus on that thing specifically. So, and I think truly his story and what happened to him and how he came out of that and resurrected is what earned him a place among the pantheon in this book. It's what made him the hero.
And he's currently on his own in 2025, another resurrection path, and been seeing this past week some new green shoots that are popping. So, with all of our traders, they're still going through. We had to have a Traders of Our Time Part 2. They all still undergoing. Some are moving fast ahead. Some are going through a transition phase career-wise. And the chapter of the hero is a chapter where it will be coming out on the 27th of March, 2025, on Traders of Our Time. But if you cannot wait, we have the free chapter 1, on tradersofourtime.com that you can download immediately. But closing words on the hero is, from my perspective, a trader that you want to learn from on the power of being committed at the beginning of your career, but also the learning of not foregoing what got you there, because the fall can be so deep and so powerful. And then also what you'll learn is how you link your emotions and your identity that actually can keep you grounded for a longer period than that is necessary.
Closing words, Alex. He is the vanguard early shoot of what is the new professional of what's coming in the industry. In so many aspects, both outside of his exact trading methodology to the way he approaches, the way he thinks. And you want to study who is on the fringes because they will dominate the center in the future. And that is the hero.
Thank you, Bogdan.